unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello everyone and welcome to In Depth, a production of Souls and Liberty. 42 days to go until the election, and the spotlight has returned to Catholicism just last week, immediately after Trump's New York rally. Look at this. All right, Catholics will likely prove to be the voting bloc, pivotal voting bloc, and if Trump wins them, he's going to have the inside track on the White House.
There should be bishops across the country who are emphatically upset that she is completely disregarding participating in a Catholic event that since the 1950s has been attended by every presidential candidate.
She is a radical, and to go back to her position on abortion, she has stated where she is, as every Democratic U.S. senator has by voting for the Schumer Amendment on abortion in the last Congress, or when she was still in the Senate, and there was no restrictions.
All right, joining us today are Jim Ellis, pollmeister, he's the pollmeister, and Trey Traynor, who sits on the Federal Election Commission, but is here as a private citizen and a believing Catholic to share his thoughts and opinions with us. I'm your host, Gary Michael Vorse. Trey, straight to you. That Catholic vote, you're getting down to the wire. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've always thought that the Catholic vote is critical to what's going on in this election cycle, and I think that they are showing to be a leader of the direction of the country. In fact, I think it's the main reason that the Harris campaign focuses so desperately on the abortion issue is because they want to continue to drive that wedge between believing Catholics and others that are out there. So I think it's critically important. And I think that's what you're seeing is there's starting to be a strong push to bring Catholics on board to the various campaigns.
Yeah, it's very true. Jim, we did a show last week, and we get the emails constantly now because we're signed up for it. The Harris campaign has a weekly phone bank of bad Catholics calling Catholics, telling them to get out to vote. I don't think there's a similar thing. I mean, there's obviously a push on the Trump side, but this one is orchestrated directly by Kamala and her, underlings to get Catholics to vote for her specifically. Your thoughts on the importance of the Catholic vote?
Well, I think it's critically important, Gary, because if you look at these battleground states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, the Catholic population is quite high. It's 25% estimated in both Nevada and Wisconsin and 24% in Pennsylvania. These states are among the group that's going to decide the outcome of the election. And therefore, with such large Catholic populations in each, it becomes incumbent upon the Trump campaign to get out and identify them and get those votes to the polls.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Harris campaign is really, they get that. I don't know how much success they're, experiencing from it, but they certainly, they can't be blamed for not trying because they certainly are. We're going to talk about this obviously for the rest of the show, but just a brief moment here to remind everybody if you'd like to support what we're doing here, because nobody gives you this kind of analysis we give you here at Souls and Liberty. We go in depth, which is obviously the name of the show, and talk about things, to the point of exhaustion sometimes because they are that detailed. They really do need to be emphasized. So if you would like to support what we do here, please feel free to give us a monthly donation, a founding donation, a one-time donation. Click on that donate button. And thank you very much in advance. And for those of you who are already supporting us, thank you very much. Gentlemen, the polling, especially in the blue wall states, and you alluded to this already, Jim, where Catholic voters are overrepresented to their national numbers. The national voting bloc, Jim, of Catholics is about, the population of Catholics is about 21 to 22% of the overall population. And an additional point here is that Catholics kind of punch above their weight class. They vote in larger percentages, usually 23 to 24%, so again, punching above their weight class. So they really do become critical. And again, in those blue wall states, is there, what's the trick to getting Catholics there to say, Kamala is a communist, and we need to put Trump back in.
Well, we don't even need for them to say the first part. They just need to say, we need to put Trump back in.
Yeah, but the first part's so fun to say. Come on, it's so fun because it's true.
Yes, right. There's a big difference on the Catholic vote or what we're seeing on Anglo or white Catholics versus the Hispanic Catholics.
Yes.
And Trump is doing extremely well with the white Catholic vote, not as well with the Hispanics. It's almost reverse. It's in the 60s among white Catholics for Trump, in the 30s among Hispanics. That's pretty much what we see nationally, too. So not only do they need to turn out those Anglo or white Catholics, they need to have education programs, really need to increase his support, Trump's support, if he's to win with Hispanic Catholics, rather, in these critically important battleground states.
Yeah, Trey, the same line of questioning here. The Hispanic population of Catholics in America is just about 40%, just a tick under. So when you look at the white Catholic vote, which is about roughly 60%, there's a little less, but call it a 60-40 split, that Trump has essentially locked down. I don't think we're going to see much movement in these areas in the next 40 days. Trump has essentially locked down that white Catholic vote, and which is the larger percentage of all Catholic vote, and is trailing. So you wind up with the poll right now that Trump is slightly ahead, 52 to 53% of Catholic votes to Kamala's 46, 47. He's got about a 4 to 5 point lead total across the nation among Catholics. Is the Harris campaign, as far as you know, like concerned about that at all? Because it seems like it should be, oh crap, that's not good.
Well, I don't know if the Harris campaign is concerned about it at all. But what I do know is that the bad theology that's coming from the leadership within the church is leading to this misunderstanding of Hispanic Catholics. And it largely revolves around the bad theology about the open borders that we have in the southern United States. And they're playing upon that. Now, the Catholic Church gets so much money from the federal government, and that is in jeopardy if Donald Trump gets reelected. Because that money is going to be cut off or it's going to be severely curtailed. And so at the end of the day, you have a church leadership that is fearful of Donald Trump being elected. And so you have white Catholics who are following the tenets of the faith and focusing on the issues that are important, the moral issues that should guide them in their votes. And then you have you have others within the church who are listening to kind of issues that aren't moral imperatives as reasons to support a different candidate. So at the end of the day, this is a failure of the leadership of the church. And the only way that that is overcome within the faith is for those Catholics who are sitting in the pews to talk to their fellow parishioners about the important issues, the important moral issues that are at stake for the country and who they should support.
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy you have here that, it's a more pro-life, pro-family group, sort of nascently among Hispanic Catholics. I mean, they're on the issue of abortion, they're like 2/3 self-identified pro-life. And over on the other side, among white Catholics, it's nowhere near that high. As a matter of fact, depending on which numbers you look at, there's a little bit majority pro-abortion on the white Catholic side. Yet when you pull out the life issue and the family issues, the thing tilts towards Trump. It's just weird. All of these numbers, and I don't know that there's anything to really be gleaned from any of this, because there seem to be these sort of self-contradictions among, even within the same voting group, Jim. How do you make sense out of, this poll says this, that poll says the other, this is this, Catholics this, white Catholics, and Hispanic Catholics, well, yes, but no, but yes. The whole thing's like flipping weird. It really is.
Well, the whole electorate is schizophrenic. I mean, let's go look at every poll and the question regarding, is the country on the right track or have we gotten off in the wrong direction? And every poll has between 60 and 70% of the people saying we're off on the wrong direction. And then when it comes to, well, who you're going to vote for, and it's incumbent. And that's just doesn't make any sense. So here you have an electorate, not just within the Catholic segment, but as a whole, talking about they want change because they don't like what they see, yet their solution is to reelect all the people that they currently have.
Yeah,
and something is amiss here. And I'm not quite sure why we've seen such a divergence in those two questions. They don't like the way things are going by and large, but the numbers of incumbent retention are huge. In 2022, for example, and I think the same thing's going to happen this time, we saw 56 governors and senators run for re-election, and 55 of them won. For members of the U.S. House, those that ran for re-election, 98.1% were re-elected. How is that a change election when that's what people call for? So it's way beyond the Catholic segment. It's something that's plaguing the whole American society, which is something I don't think we've seen before. It's not to this degree, anyway.
Yeah, I think it's this degree. I think is the degree of the schizophrenia, as you so well put it. When we come back, I was going to take a very quick little break. When we come back, I want to hear from you. Do you think the Catholic vote leads the United States? It is the largest single voting bloc there is. Or is it just indicative of, it's kind of, Catholics have their pulse on the culture because they're right in the thick of it. And so they're just predictive, but they don't necessarily lead. Mull over that for a moment. We're going to be right back right after this. No matter who wins in November, we have to embrace that we are living in a post-Christendom culture. And the heart of that is a rejection of the gospel. As one item on our agenda to combat this, Souls and Liberty is hosting our first annual retreat at sea. You might be familiar with the annual event we produced for over 10 years at Church Militant. Dr. Jules Gomez, our Rome correspondent, and I are going to be doing the presenting, and the theme is Christians in Exile Triumphing in Adversity, which provides a whole range of discussions to think about. Now, we sail out of Galveston, Texas to the Western Caribbean November 10th to the 17th, yes, right after the election. I think all of us are probably going to need it one way or the other. Please join us for serious discussion, spiritual preparation, and bonding, very important, bonding with fellow Catholics. Registration information is provided below and on our site at soulsandliberty.com/retreat-at-sea 2024. So sign up and we hope to see you there. All right, gentlemen, our retreat at sea. Hopefully viewers at home there will be able to come to that and have a very good bonding time, because there's a lot of fellowship that's going to be needed one way or the other. So gentlemen, Trey, let me go to you. Is the Catholic vote, does it lead the country because of the numbers of Catholic voters, or is it just predictive of, because if you kind of understand how the Catholic vote is going, you're going to kind of understand how the whole national vote is going? Which is it in your opinion?
Well, I really think that it leads more than it is predictive. The main reason that I think that it leads is because of the number of Catholics that are involved in public service, frankly. I mean, the church is very good at teaching about patriotism, about being involved in your community, about actually going out and doing the good works that are called for in the gospel. And so I think that leads to having more leaders in government offices. And so I think that you see more Catholics participating because it's more talked about when they show up for Sunday Mass. You see those same people who are leaders in the community. So ultimately, I think it leads in that sense. Now, I also think that that leads to the fact that it's, the last form of acceptable bigotry in the country is bigotry towards Catholics. And I even felt this myself in my confirmation process to be on the Federal Election Commission. You had members of the United States Senate who were asking questions about my Catholicism and about my support for the Catholic Church being the one true faith, and whether or not that was acceptable for me to serve on the Federal Election Commission, which has nothing to do with what we do at the Federal Election Commission. So, I think it is an indicator that Catholics are in fact leading, that they're still allowed to be discriminated against by others in government service.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and also from your experience there directly, that's a excellent point. Jim, I want to ask you the same question. Is the Catholic vote, does it lead the country, or is it just an indicator, a good indicator of how the vote is going to go?
Right now, I think it's a good indicator, but it certainly has the opportunity to lead, and where it can lead and where the Republicans are doing a terrible job for the second cycle in a row is on the abortion issue. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at the Democratic campaigns across the country, they're back to the single issue ads, all on abortion, 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 abortion. That's all they talk about. And it's interesting. I was at an event yesterday, and a fellow we were in Pennsylvania with business leaders, and we were talking afterwards. And this fellow mentioned that his 12-year-old son came up to him and said, "Dad, can I ask you a question?" And he says, "Sure, what?" And he says, "What really is abortion? Every time I'm on my computer, all I get are ads about abortion." And he explained the whole thing to him, and his son said, "That's terrible." Yeah. And he said, "Yes, it is." And then he said, I went to my wife and we said, we need to look at where he's looking on the internet if he's getting all these ads. What sites are he on? And you know what sites he was on?
I'm scared.
Sports. He was on football, basketball, hockey. His father said it was all sports sites. So that's how pervasive the Democrat campaign is on abortion. And where the Catholic Church can lead and help guide some of these Republicans, and their solution to this is say nothing for the second cycle in a row, and that was a disaster in 2022, is to lead on the issues particularly of late-term abortion and parental consent for minors to have that, because those are two segments where the general population is for us, and that's where we have to start.
Yeah, I agree. And the work of the bishops, I mean, I've been doing that, as you guys know, for 20 years. They don't give a damn about abortion, and they can mouth off all they want about this and write their strongly worded letters and the whole bit. When all is said and done, they don't give a damn about abortion. Collectively, I'm speaking. They're left over with the social justice crap from the 1960s through the 1990s with the likes of Cardinal Bernardine and that whole crowd. They don't give a damn about those tens of millions of children that have been abused through murdered through abortion, the whole abortion industry. They never say a word about it. Even when Nellie Gray was there at the height of her influence running the March for Life, you'd see 5, 6, maybe that many bishops on stage with her. And, there's 5 or 6 bishops in Washington, D.C. alone. What they will have to answer to Almighty God for their lack of standing up for the innocent. I mean, God help them. I hope they're just ignorant, but you got to believe, really a bishop who gets to be like the archbishop of some big archdiocese is just ignorant about all of this. Hopefully for their eternal salvation, that's true. But shifting gears here for a second, guys. Oh, go ahead.
If I could, Gary, just real quick, there should be a hue and cry towards the fact that Kamala Harris is skipping the Al Smith dinner in New York. I mean, we're going
to be getting to that. Absolutely, there should be
bishops across the country who are emphatically upset that she is completely disregarding participating in a Catholic event that since the 1950s has been attended by every presidential candidate. She doesn't want to show up there because she doesn't want to stand on her record against Catholics. She persecuted David Daleiden in California. She is pro-abortion across the board. She won't even answer the simple question from President Trump at the debate about, when is abortion okay? At 9 months, 8 months, 7 months? I mean, she will not answer that question. And yet she's allowed to just completely disregard a major segment of the population in New York State and across the country by not participating in that event. And I cannot for the life of me understand why every Catholic bishop across the country is not beating her up for not at least coming out and participating, which frankly it's a fun event. It's an event where, there's some roasting that goes on. At the end of the day, I mean, there's nothing particularly theological about the event, but It really is a slap in the face to Catholics.
Yeah, I mean, why won't the bishops do that? Well, I did research back in the church militant days. 1/3 of the bishops are registered Democrats. And, those are the ones that we're able to discover because lots of states don't report. But, 1/3 of the bishops of the U.S. Bishops Conference are registered Democrats. How can you wear a cross around your neck, with the Son of God immolating himself for the salvation of man, the redemption of the human race, and then go vote for someone who murders children? You talk about schizophrenic. I mean, that's schizophrenic. But Jim, I want to come back to a point that Trey just raised. Kamala has this track record being anti-Catholic. She's opposed, for example, a judicial nominee back in the day. Specifically, she brought it up that he was a member of the Knights of Columbus, and somehow he wouldn't be able to vote or rule on cases accordingly. And then, of course, as Trey just brought up, the whole Al Smith dinner debacle. Al Smith, for people who may not know, he was the first Catholic presidential candidate, governor of New York. I mean, it was kind of this big thing. He was running for president in the sort of the height of the KKK, Know Nothing Party days, and all of that. So, Jim, I mean, she's not just Catholic. She's actually anti-Catholic.
Yes, and she is a radical. And to go back to her position on abortion, she has stated where she is, as every Democratic U.S. senator has, by voting for the Schumer amendment on abortion in the last Congress, or when she was still in the Senate, and there was no restrictions. So they are all on record. Every Democratic senator at the time, and she was there, were all on record as voting for late-term abortion and no parental consent, every one of them. And this needs to be brought out. And that's where Catholics can lead to begin to bring this issue to the forefront, start pressuring the bishops to start bringing this issue to the forefront. And that's where we're going to see some movement if they start coming out. Obviously, Kamala Harris isn't going to the Al Smith dinner because she's anti-Catholic. Yeah. That's the main reason. It doesn't matter what she says, although she doesn't really do any events anywhere. So it is consistent with the rest of her campaign. It's not just that she's singling out this particular event. And they're trying to hide her because they know that they don't want her positions, her radical extreme positions, exposed. That's why they're hiding her. Yeah. And she's not very good when it comes to being interviewed. And so they think they can get away with that. Polling now is suggesting that, well, maybe they can't. And even the Democratic senators I saw yesterday, there was a tweet about them from insiders saying they're getting a little nervous about Trump, thinking that Trump is underpolling in some of the battleground states based on historical data, which we've talked about before, and they're correct. Mm-hmm. And so they're getting a little nervous about that. So we may see a change in direction soon on this Harris campaign, because right now the trends are not looking good for them, and they are looking good for Trump, and it needs to be, here's where the Trump campaign needs to put their foot on the accelerator.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Trey, I want to go back to you for just a second on the Al Smith dinner. We know the bishop's falling down, big deal. I mean, there's a shock, stepping up, saying and doing the right thing. But from a political standpoint, a strategic, tactical standpoint on the part of Kamala and her campaign, it doesn't seem to me to be a good move. I mean, I get the weighing going on behind the scenes. Should we put her on stage in a Catholic environment? And what if Trump says, she's anti-Catholic and here's 27 examples? That would be bad. I mean, they've obviously done the calculus and decided best that we not go. But, from a strategic standpoint, do you think that's a smart move, Trey?
Well, no, I don't think it's a smart move at all. I mean, as we were talking about just a few moments ago, I mean, if the Catholic vote is in fact leading the country and not a predictor of the country, then you're eschewing the entire populace of Catholics by doing that. But more importantly for me, her non-attendance at the Al Smith dinner is carte blanche for every participating, practicing Catholic every Sunday that you are sitting in a pew, that when Mass is over with and you are congregating outside to talk to your friends and neighbors about who you are supporting for President of the United States and why. And you don't even have to talk about issues. You can just say, I'm supporting Donald Trump because at least he goes and participates in Catholic functions. I've seen him pray with Catholics. I've seen him engage in activities that are friendly towards me as a Catholic, and that's the reason that I'm supporting him. And you don't have to focus on issues like the economy, the border, wars across the world. You don't have to get into those conversations. You can firmly resolve to talk about issues that are just close to you personally as a Catholic, saying, I know I'm not going to be discriminated against if Donald Trump is in office. If Kamala Harris is there, well, I'm not sure. So I'm going to take my chances with the guy that's at least been praying with Catholics.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Last point, gents, if we can. The polls in general, we've sort of danced around it a little bit here, but not only are they all over the place, it's kind of like there's two entirely different sets of people or different countries being polled, but even in Harris's favorable polls, She's vastly underperforming both Biden in 20 and Hillary in 16. So, Jim, I'll start with you and we'll wrap up with Trey. My question is, well, okay, if you still only win by a last-second field goal as opposed to 7 or 10 points, you still win. Why is the underperformance by Harris something to pay attention to? She's still ahead in the polling and the polling averages and all that sort of stuff, but I mean, it is by a whisker. Why does it matter, the underperforming?
And that's on the national polls, which really don't matter.
Right.
And it's in these battleground states that do matter, and that's where Trump is doing much better. And that's all that really matters. Just remember, North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania. If Trump wins all 3 of those, he wins. It's that simple, because his other states, the 25 states that have backed him twice, North Carolina is the weakest one of those. The other 24 are solid. North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Georgia, that's all that matters. That's all that you need to follow right now. And even we talked a lot about Arizona and Nevada. He's looking okay there too. But those 3 fundamental states are what matters in these polls and what matters on turnout and what matters on early voting. And that's where this next month is really going to concentrate on. Because, Gary, you said we've got 42 days until the election. Yeah, but we've got about 15 days before we really start seeing early voting kick in. Right. And that is going to be a major factor. So remember, we have election month now, not election day.
That's very true. It's very true. Trey, wrap us up. Same question to you, man.
Sure. Well, as you know, early voting has already started in some of these states, and it's very important for people to get out and vote and get their vote banked early, because we don't really know what's going to happen these last few weeks until the election. But for Kamala Harris, I mean, she has to be nervous. And I think this is the reason why she's now adamantly calling for another debate. And I think Donald Trump's right not to go into another debate. First of all, he's done 2, she's done 1. That's not his fault that they've made changes in the candidates in the process. But, you know, he doesn't need to do any more debates. But listen, she's got the entire apparatus of the major media establishment behind her, and that's not able to push her over the top in any of these polls. They all are consistently close. And I think that's why you're seeing the underpolling for Trump, is the fact that, I mean, look, you've got every major media outlet in the country pulling for her, doing everything they can. She's got these Oprah Winfrey shows and everything else that she goes on, and she can't handle those. She's not a good candidate, and they can't prop her up. And I think that the polls are showing that. And I think that that's why we see these numbers with underpolling.
Yeah, that's keep praying, right? Praying and working. Prayer and good works. All right, man, we're going to leave it there for the moment. As we said, only 40 days to go until the 5th. About a week and a half to go before the voting season begins. And we're going to see. Thanks very much, men. Appreciate it. I'll be back on shortly. All right, final thought here. When Trump stepped off the stage last week at that massive rally at the Nassau County Coliseum on Long Island, with 16,000 people in attendance and another 20,000 outside watching on jumbotrons, a Catholic priest, a Carmelite, was waiting with the brown scapular and a relic of the true cross just off the back part of the stage. He prayed over Trump, imploring divine protection for him. Let's take a look at it. In my time as a journalist and media professional, I've been following presidential elections for 10 cycles now. That's 40 years for the arithmetically challenged, and I've never seen anything like this at all, ever, from a Catholic Christian perspective. There's never been such center stage emphasis on God and religion, good versus evil, spiritual warfare, as this election. It's talked about daily, openly. It's like America's fate has come down to its willingness to confront its sins and return to God, or finish the great walkaway that began in the 1960s and finally give God the complete heave-ho. One thing is certain, this division will not go on because it can't. House divided against itself cannot stand. The United States will either be Nineveh and begin the long road to repentance, or Sodom and Gomorrah and be destroyed. What's somewhat just as weird, though, is we actually know the precise time of our renewal or destruction. It's just 42 days from today. God love you. I'm Gary Michael Boris.